Good evening and welcome to Generation Movie on a Monday night in October.
Woo.
Oh, it's been a long 2 weeks, Rich Drees. I'm sorry I wasn't here last week. I know we had loads of things to talk about. We'll talk about them tonight. Welcome, friends and folk, to our first Halloween episode this year. It is the Jerry Dandridge episode tonight. So we're going to be doing some movies celebrating their 40th filmavversary this year. And tonight we start with Fright Night, one of the very best 80s horror films. Then next week, Rich, we're going to do a little werewolf movie called Silver Bullet. And then we're going to dive into November a little bit. And we're going to go a little bit against the grain because I missed last week. But we're going to do Return of the Living Dead, all celebrating their 40th anniversary this year. So vampires, werewolves, and zombies, oh my, is the theme this year. Thank you for joining us. My name is JW Colwell. I'm joined as always by my good friend Rich Drees, who's filming from Philadelphia because he's at another fucking con or festival or something.
The lovely 34th. The lovely 34th annual Philadelphia Film Festival, which I've been going to for about 20 years now, give or take a few.
And you're on fire. You've seen two of the big guns for this November, right? Either October, November.
I got it. Yeah. We'll keep talking, but I apologize as I'm trying to figure out a way to set up my iPad here because I don't have my usual stupid setup that I have at home.
That's fine. Yeah, you're missing all your funny mistakes and your pop. So we did have
nobody needs that.
Yeah, nobody wants that. Nobody wants to see.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. So tonight is Fright Night. It's celebrating 40 years, and it's I was doing research on this movie today, Rich, and there are some mind-boggling things in its history that you sit back and you go, "That happened? Holy shit! Okay, that's crazy."
Like the remake, for instance.
What was that?
Speaking mind-boggling, like the remake. Why did they do that?
Well, the remake is it's remake in name only. It's a rhino, right? It's because it doesn't have any of the fun.
No,
he's immediately super dangerous, and he never stops being super dangerous. As opposed to, we're going to talk about this guy, but this guy right here, this Chris Sarandon fellow, a very talented actor that I hear good things. No lie, sunk his teeth into this role. It's funny vampire humor. But one of the things I said in the lead up to this, this movie achieves cult status because of the cast, the script, the general demeanor, and just how fun it is, right? It's not necessarily the scariest horror movie, but it's not scary, and then it's not necessarily the funniest horror movie, but it's funny. So it's we're going to talk about Ebert. Ebert's comment is one of the greatest comments. It's both a backhanded compliment and a wonderful front-handed compliment. That we'll talk about. Comments. It is good to be back, though. Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, Joe, Grand Poobah.
Evening, Joseph.
Good evening, friends. Happy Friday night. Happy Friday night to you too, Ken. I like that. Happy Friday night. That should be a holiday. I think the only survivor we haven't had on yet are Chris Sarandon and Stephen Geoffreys. Yeah, I'm surprised about the Geoffreys one not being on the network, but I would love to talk to Chris Sarandon. Chris Sarandon comes out of this movie not only with one of the great vampire performances of all time, but he comes out of this movie with a very good friendship with Tom Holland that will get him into other movies down the line, which we'll talk about when we get to the franchise / legacy of this particular movie. I know you guys had Tom Holland on. Yep. I know he's a good friend of one of our people. I met Chris back in the 80s going into the dry cleaners near my house. Nice. Did you say hi to him and make sure there was no Chucky dolls running around? Anyway, So
was he in
let's do
Ken?
Yeah, well,
yeah.
Did he
give us some more of that? Give us some more of that story, please.
Yeah, did he have like Princess Buttercup with him? Okay, so let's get some news out of the way. For the news, the weird news of the day. It's the weirdest news. It's the weirdest fucking news of the day, and it's going to involve this picture. So the picture I'm showing is Adam Driver playing Kylo Ren in one of the new sequel trilogy pictures, and he has a lightsaber and he looks badass, and and no matter what you think of the new sequels, he was a great character with dark intentions and also like a great backstory and everything else. But there's news today, Rich. Why don't you start us off with this one, and I will tell you where I'm at and why it's both hilarious and also sad. Go ahead.
Well, just a couple of hours ago, the AP threw out a interview with Adam Driver, where he talked very candidly and actually kind of surprisingly, he very much, he was very open about being in Star Wars, which he generally isn't. He's very much a private person overall, but he does like working with filmmakers. And we've seen him do that with Noah Baumbach, Scorsese, Coppola, bunches of people. And turns out he and his buddy Steven Soderbergh were kicking around an idea that they enlisted Mark S. Zickery to write a full script for, and they kind of went to the people at Lucasfilm and said, "Hey, we've got a Star Wars movie here called The Hunt for Ben Solo, and we think it takes place after Rise of Skywalker." Now,
right, wait, and this is where it gets fun, but also crazy.
Yes,
it basically would have been a new trilogy with a. Even though Kylo Ren dies in the spoiler alert, dies in the new trilogy, it would have been a character arc for Ren where he basically would have unfinished business and come back through the Force and basically maybe get away from being dark side and become a Jedi, and so a whole redemption arc for Kylo Ren and Ben Solo, right?
Yeah. He's hunting for his true self as Ben Solo. Which is what I'm taking from the title.
Right, and not anybody else looking for him. He's looking for himself. And it's either, like, it could have been like a high concept script too. It could have been Ben Solo hunting through the Force, which is played out in new versions of Star Wars like Ahsoka, right? Where there are versions of Hayden Christensen that are not Darth Vader that are hanging out in the Force, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't that it wasn't an unprecedented thing. It might have been unprecedented at the time. But him and Soderbergh were doing it. They took it to Bob Iger and Alan Bergman, and they threw them out of the house. They said no. Because they didn't understand the concept where Ben Solo was alive. And with that, it was over. I find it like it's your take on it is mind-boggling. Anybody says no to Soderbergh when he has a finished script.
Yeah.
And usually he works pretty fast.
He works fast. He knows how to work inexpensively. Soderbergh shows up, you open your checkbook is what you do. I'm sorry.
And I think from the side, I say I love Soderbergh movies. He does work cheap and inexpensive. Maybe there's something there, but also I could see Disney going, I don't get the concept, and therefore, maybe having plans down the road for that could be that.
We are starting to see what Disney is shaping up to be post-sequel trilogy in the timeline. We've got Starfighter in production right now. We have the one Rey movie. We have the possibility of an entire trilogy of Rey movies from another filmmaker. So
Mandalorian and Grogu.
Well, Mandalorian and Grogu is back during between original trilogy and sequel trilogy. But just the idea, that they're starting. They, I think, have charted out at least a little bit of where they want to go. And if this kind of idea that, basically they wrote on spec for fun and decided to toss it over the transom into the office to see if anybody would be interested, I could see where the offer, initially, Lucasfilm would be like, oh, fuck yeah. But does it really jive with what other things they want to do as well?
I don't think so. That's where I think, and the other side of it is Soderbergh does work economically and judiciously because he has to. Because even when he makes great movies, for some reason, they only do okay. So I think that's part of it. But I want to read this quote, which I thought was hilarious from the article. Because you sent me the same article I had already read, which I thought was hilarious. You and I
literally was walking.
You and I, we were
screening back to here.
Yeah, we were
flipping through my phone and I saw this and I was like, oh shit, I got to
We're like females that share periods, you and I. We are we find the same things at the exact same moments. So I just want to read this quote, which I thought was hilarious. This is Adam Driver talking about, we wanted to be judicial about how to spend money and to be economical with it and do it for less than most, but in the same spirit of what those movies are, which is handmade and character driven, Driver says. Empire Strikes Back being, in my opinion, the standard of what those movies were. But he is, to me, one of my favorite directors of all time. He lives his code, lives his ethics, doesn't compromise. And so I could see Driver getting on board after Logan Lucky, working with Soderbergh, getting and Soderbergh going, I really liked your character. I wish they could have done something better with it. I would have done something better with it. And Adam Driver going, I bet you could do something better with it. I bet anybody could do something better with it than what they did with it. Screeching off the wheels. But it is one of those storylines where it's like, it's interesting and it's a wonderful Hollywood, what could have been. I would say your next thing is to find the screenplay so that you and I can read it.
No shit. I would strangle a nun on national television to read this screenplay, honestly.
Depends on what nun it was.
Okay. There's a large choice that I pick from. But what's really frustrating to me is Lucasfilm is supposed to be in charge of the whole franchise. And Lucasfilm was on board with this idea. And then Bob Iger, the next level up, shoots it down because he didn't understand it. And at what point shouldn't Bob Iger be having faith in the people running the various studios, Kevin Feige, Kathleen Kennedy, whoever, is in charge of Pixar right now, et cetera, et cetera. He should have a certain amount of hands off and is like, okay, I don't get it, but I trust your judgment.
Stop. If that's your take on it, you of all people know how sour things have been here and there for Star Wars.
True.
So I mean, I think him not understanding it is one thing. The other big problem this week for Iger and Star Wars is that you have Lucas out in the fucking press going, yeah, it's not mine anymore. So this coupled with this story is not like, it's I
don't think that's a problem.
Well, no, but it's a problem in the sense of you have some parts of the fan base that we talked about, the negative parts of the fan base that are incredibly loud, incredibly small, and incredibly negative.
Incredibly dumb.
And incredibly dumb. And they're chomping at the bit because now they're seeing Lucas go, I have nothing to do with any of this shit. And now you have a thing where like Soderbergh could have directed a Star Wars movie. And it's like piling on. We know you don't like Kathleen Kennedy. I get it. You know what I mean? And apparently Bob Iger doesn't trust her either. So it all becomes like this house of cards. And I think Disney's playing with fire with Star Wars. They're playing with fire with Marvel. They're playing with fire with all these things.
Well, I don't think Lucas's comment is really Disney's problem. If anything, it's a problem for those fans who are all like, "Oh, Disney should just sell Star Wars back to George Lucas." He doesn't care anymore. He's moved on. He's like, "Hey, I'm fine. I'm doing other stuff."
I also don't think those fans remember how much Lucas hates us. I
think he's let go of that at this point.
I don't know. There were many. You and I talked about this before. There were many a conversation where George Lucas basically just said, I can't stand. Yeah, the special editions are my edition. Shut the fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like,
I have a philosophical disagreement with him on that.
Well, but what I'm saying to you is, I don't think people remember. Like, people now just remember Star Wars being part of Disney. They don't remember how angry George was at the end when he sold it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a detachment that, like, you know, Lucas was very angry about the prequel trilogy not doing as well as he thought it was going to do, or not being as received well as he thought it was going to be received. Then he sells it to Disney, and now everybody's like, well, we don't, you know, my take on Disney buying Star Wars was Disney likes nostalgia. We should be in good hands. And theoretically, for a while, we were. Right? So we got many things that we weren't ever going to get. We've gotten TV shows that are better than any other Star Wars except for The Empire Strikes Back. We've gotten new characters that are, you know, iconic with The Mandalorian and Grogu. We've gotten, you know, Ahsoka getting a full-fledged, you know, character treatment that she deserves from the Clone Wars. We've gotten a lot of things, but we've also gotten, you know, two movies that weren't well received. We've gotten a couple of shows that were kind of like, what happened? Even though I thought Obi-Wan was good, I thought The Acolyte was good. So I think it's a mixed bag. And the idea, when you get the idea, I think you're right. Your first reaction is, Soderbergh wants to direct a Star Wars movie. You let Soderbergh direct a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
It's
even if it was a kitchen sink drama set in the Star Wars universe, I would be all down for that. But I mean, just go back and look this year at Black Bag. The man knows how to do a taut little, spy thriller.
Yeah. And I have no problem with Steven Soderbergh. It's more the limitations on Star Wars as a franchise has grown in leaps and bounds, in just the sense that sometimes people don't know what to make of it anymore, right? Yeah. So sad but true. Also, things that people don't know what to make of and that are not doing well at the box office, as I make a subtle turn into box office returns. Shocking, Rich. A horror film is #1 at the box office in October. Black Phone 2 opens to $27 million, a 3-day weekend.
Not bad.
Its budget is 30. So, it basically it grossed another 27 domestic, 15 international. So it's about $12 million over what it needed to gross at the week. Just to break even. And it takes the franchise in a new direction. Tron Ares drops 67%, which is not a shocker. It drops to $11 million on 600 more screens, and is at 54. Good Fortune, the Aziz Ansari, Keanu Reeves, Seth Rogen movie opens at 3rd with 6.1, which, depending on how you want to look at it, are we dealing with an Aziz Ansari backlash because he did that Saudi show? Are we dealing with a backlash because he had a problem with someone along the line where he had some sort of Me Too thing happen, but not really?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Or what? So what's happening with him? He used to be untouchable. One Battle After Another, by the way, only dropped 43%, 3.8, 61 domestic. Worldwide, it's at. Hold on.
We were talking about how horror has been having a great year this year.
It really
not just in terms of box office, but in terms of
quality.
Good substantive films. Yeah, and I heard a statistic over the weekend that so far this year, horror has brought in over $1 billion. I think the figure is like 1.1 or 1.3 billion dollars at the box office, which for a small genre, a genre that generally doesn't generate big box office, that's still pretty damned impressive when you're factoring in Sinners, you're factoring in Weapons. We've got Black Phone 2 this week. We've still got Five Nights at Freddy's 2, I think, is coming up, right?
Yeah, you got Five Nights at Freddy's 2 for Christmas, which is going to be huge. It's a sequel. It's going to do well, whether it's good or not. And it's getting ready right in that area. Sinners grossed 364 worldwide, 278 domestic. You also have, like Final Destination Bloodlines, which came out of fucking nowhere, right? And grossed 283.2 million worldwide, 136 domestic. 28 years later, opened well, but then kind of like it grossed 103 worldwide. Even Megan 2.0, which did bad, grossed almost $40 million. And it's very much a year where the thing that you kind of hit on that's really interesting is that it's also it's not just that it's grossing well. It's that it's at 1.16 number of 102,000 tickets sold for horror movies in 2025. Sinners, Conjuring Last Rites, Weapons, Final Destination Bloodline, 28 years later, Nosferatu, which opened in December but played through much of January.
Right?
I know you did last summer. Hard Eyes, which is a fantastic slasher movie, came out for Valentine's Day. Black Phone 2, Him, Megan, Woman in the Yard, Together, Wolfman.
Something else that opened in LA and New York this weekend. I saw it last night, and it's going to be going a little wider just for a little bit of time because it's fucking Netflix. But at least you can go see Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein in theaters. And that's something I highly recommend. I saw it, like I said, last night at the film festival here, and it was amazing. Absolutely.
Well, like I said, it's not just that they're making movies that are banging out dollars. Horror is always good to make money. Horror movies always make money because they're cheap. And they have been since the brink of dawn. You know what I mean? Like they've been cheap and easy to make. It's the concept that we're getting such like Weapons and Sinners are. Any other year, I'd say both could be Best Picture nominees. To be fair, I don't know what we're going to get, if we're going to get 10 or 9 or whatever. But Weapons and Sinners belong in the same breath as two incredibly exhilarating horror films. That Sinners more than Weapons, but Weapons.
Frankenstein as well.
It's
epic emotions. It's a grand scale. It's giant. It's big filmmaking.
Well, yeah, and I think it's one of those things where it's not Ryan Coogler does not have to make a vampire horror film. He wanted to make a vampire horror film. So, like, some of the directors that are jumping into the water, the Hollywood horror water, aren't necessarily like Coogler is a whole different animal, but Zach Cregger is making really good movies. You know what I mean? Like, and the Blumhouse has had a rough year, but they're still chugging along, and they're acquiring franchises at a geometric rate. But it's one of those things. It's $1 billion at the box office. They're calling it a renaissance, but it's more. The box office doesn't even matter, to be honest. Yeah. It's that these movies are not only making money, but they're good. The movie's always made money. Friday the 13th Part 6 made money. You know what I mean? It cost like $10 million to make. It made like 30. You know what I mean? Like, they were always easy little things. Did well when you're renting videos in the 80s and 90s. But so the box office is weird. We don't have a big movie opening this week. But next week, Back to the Future comes back in IMAX for the first time and Dolby for the first time. And here's my problem. It opens on Halloween Day. You know what I mean? Halloween Day is not going to be a great day for Back to the Future at the box office.
It's not conducive.
November 1st and November 2nd are going to work out just fine for Back to the Future. I think they'll have the same kind of maybe a bigger return, because Back to the Future hasn't been trotted out like Jaws. I was talking to somebody who worked at a theater. You know, Jaws came out for the 50th anniversary in IMAX, grossed $10 million. But Jaws was just out 2 years ago. Back to the Future has not been. Back to the Future hasn't been trotted out. And so celebrating Back to the Future's 40th anniversary is an important thing. And it was interesting. I was looking at some of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight with Fright Night that ties in a little bit with Back to the Future, but we'll talk. And then, so we also had a loss that must be discussed. Diane Keaton passed away. We were not here for this. I am sorry we were not here for this. It is my fault. I feel bad.
It's not your fault. You had things to take care of.
I had stuff to deal with, and but I feel bad. But I want to talk about her for a second, because she's one of the very few comedic actresses that never aged out. If you understand what I'm saying, right? She's one of the few actresses that, you know, if you look through her films, like she has, you know, the 70s are incredible. She has, you know, Love and Other Strangers. She has The Godfather, Played Again, Sam, Sleeper, Godfather Part 2, Love and Death, Annie Hall, Looking for Mr. Goodbar in the same year, 77, Interiors in Manhattan. Then in the 80s, she has Reds, Shoot the Moon, Little Drummer Girl, Mrs. Soulful, Crimes of the Heart, Radio Days, Baby Boom, Heaven, The Good Mother, Lemon Sisters, Godfather Part 3. Then in 91, she, again, like her career, like she's hot other woman in the 70s. In the 80s, she's like every woman. And then in the 90s, she becomes the mom. So like Father the Bride, Manhattan Murder Mystery, Look Who's Talking Now, Unstrung Heroes, Father the Bride Part 2, First Wives Club, Marvin's Room, The Other Sister, Hanging Up, Town and Country, Something's Gotta Give in 2003, Family Stone in 2005. You know what I mean? Like she has so many of these movies where she's just, you know, she's Annie Hall. And then she's in The Godfather, and then she's in Reds. And then
she brought an energy to her performances that we've never seen the likes of, quite frankly. There's kind of like a intelligence, but a little bit of manicness to it. It's just this very iconoclastic thing that she brought to whatever she did. And she was the every woman, right? She's the ultimate every woman. Like, and again, in the 70s, she's the hot other woman. In the 80s, she's playing, you know, Little Drummer Girl. She's a CIA agent, for fuck's sake. You know what I mean? Mrs. Soulful, she's, you know, in the Canadian wilderness. You know what I mean? Like, then she gets to the 90s, becomes everybody's mom, and the 2000s. And then you look at her late career, like recently, she was still doing work, Rich. She has, you know, she had movies that released, she had Summer Camp that released in 2024, Arthur's Whiskey, Book Club, The Next Chapter, Maybe I Do, Mac and Rita, like Father Bride Part 3, it was a YouTube thing. Palms, which is a really funny movie about, you know, a bunch of aging women who decide to become cheerleaders. So, like, she had so many things going on, like, where she didn't, like, she never really gave up her place. You know what I mean? Like, she never gave up her spot in Hollywood. And her death was kind of a quick, she got sick, and she got sick fast, and then she was gone. And it's just one of those things where, you know, the iconic hat, the smile that you see any picture of her has the hat and the smile. And then you realize it's all based on this hat and this smile. And, you know, she, the best female hat wearer of all time. Quite possibly. I mean, she's been in two of my favorite films. She's, Love and Death is one of my all-time favorite comedies. I think it's absurd. It's wonderful. And she plays everything exactly right. When I got home last weekend, after finding out about her passing, when I got home from New York Comic Con, I kind of sat down and I pulled out my Blu-ray of Looking for Mr. Goodbar, which is a film of hers
that is exactly the movie I was going to say.
Criminally underseen simply because of the music rights issue. It takes place in the 70s in the disco single scene in New York City. So there's a lot of music involved, and it was always been a real bitch to clear it all, to get it out. Vinegar Syndrome finally was able to do it last year, and they put out a really nice disc. This movie was nominated for Academy Award for its cinematography, but she plays a different kind of version of her usual stock character there. And, watching it again for the first time in forever, because the last time I watched it was on like a bootleg. So it was really like watching it again for the first time. And you could, because it was a decent picture, and you could really see much more of her performance in a lot of these like dimly lit nightclubs and stuff like that. She's just so damn wonderful in that movie. And I'm hoping that if there's anything good to come out of somebody's passing, it's that people go back, discover and rediscover some of their work that they might not have been familiar with before. And if you're looking for a Diane Keaton film to watch, you've probably seen her Woody Allen stuff. You've probably seen First Wives Club. You've probably seen a bunch of it. Track down something like Looking for Mr. Goodbar, or and really.
Mr. Goodbar is the one where I was looking through today, right? And it's the one where I think she gets very little credit for how daring and risque and how, frankly, sexy it is. Even though it's one of those, it's a serial killer. It's essentially a murder movie, but you don't know it's a murder movie till the end. But it's based on a real life thing that happened, and she's just smoldering in it, right? She had a sexy edge to her that was across all of her stuff, even when she's wearing the goofy, like she was put in some of the goofiest 70s outfits that ended up becoming her iconography. You know what I mean? Like, she's one of the people that can get over the edge with her stuff, and then she just became it. Like, I still get a kick out of the idea that this is what we remember her as, and it's all because of Annie Hall. The hat, it's the fucking hat. You know what I mean? And then, then you realize that she's got a hat also in fucking Godfather, and then you look at Red, and she's got a weird smock on her head in Reds, and like
same thing with
and then you realize that she holds her own with like younger actresses at the time. Family Stone is one of the most underrated 90s 2000 movies.
Oh yeah, Natasha will agree with you on that. She loves Family Stone.
And I think the other place where she holds her own, the three people in this picture made Father of the Bride one of the biggest hits of the 90s, and her being able to hang with the two men in this picture could give you an idea of how gifted she was as a comedian.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I think the other one that I would say that's criminally underrated that nobody talks about is this one, Rich. I mean, people talk about this one, but this is the one I think about. 1987, there's a movie called Baby Boom. It comes out right around the time that Fatal Attraction comes out. So it's right around the time when everybody's talking about Fatal Attraction and, about women being put to the side. And this is about a woman who goes into an office and decides she wants to have a kid because her biological clock is ticking. It's one of the funniest fucking movies I've ever seen. In the sense that she's ebullient, and she, like, the idea of the limitations that are being put on women. And it's the same year as Fatal Attraction. It is an excellent double bill because it is the two poles of females on both sides of what men want from females. And it's an incredible kind of like where we were. Either your biological clock was ticking in 87, or your biological clock was ruptured to the point where you're boiling bunnies in somebody's kitchen. You know what I mean? And I just think it's one of the great 80s movies that doesn't get heralded. as much. A couple comments. Hold on. What do we got? I love Back to the Future. Yes. And I love Diane Keaton. I don't think anybody I don't think you cannot love Diane Keaton. I just think she's one of the very best. And, you know, the fact that she died so tragic, and she was still working. She had stuff she was working on. She had movies that came out in 2024. So we're talking like she's not, you know, we lost her at a real interesting time. The other person that I thought had the best response was they asked Keanu Reeves. He was on Colbert promoting Waiting for Godot, and he was telling stories about he's sitting at a table in his mid-30s as an actor, and on one side of the table is Jack Nicholson, and on the other side of the table is Diane Keaton. And in between takes, as Keanu Reeves is telling the story, he's like, in between takes, they're calling each other everything in the fucking book. Cocksucker, motherfucker, everything in the fucking book in between takes. And he's sitting there going, I'm between two fucking legends. How does this react? And that particular performance from Keanu Reeves, him and Diane Keaton's chemistry in that movie is off the charts. Mm-hmm. It's next to Winona Ryder. It is probably the closest Keanu Reeves has come to God with a female acting partner.
Yes.
Right? So I just think it's really interesting we lost her, and that's, you know, quick thing before we get to the movie, let's talk about you. Explain these pictures, Rich Drees. Who are you talking to here?
Oh, that's me and my old buddy Ryan Johnson. This was just a couple days ago at the Philadelphia Film Festival. The new Knives Out mystery, Wake Up Dead Man, was the opening night film this past Thursday. I did a red carpet interview with him, which I'm hoping to get actually finally dropped sometime tomorrow. It's been a busy week of actually watching movies, so it's kind of like hard turning around those reviews. But I'm going to take a day or two away just to do some writing and get that all finished up. So we talked a little bit about that. And then after the red carpet, as we're all kind of going back towards the elevators, because they were holding it upstairs at the venue in a separate little black box place.
Is this a breaking news story?
It's not so much a breaking news story as a breaking there's not news really to tell you story. But I did kind of say, and this is remember, this is my second time I've interviewed Ryan Johnson. The first time I did not broach this subject really at all. So the second time I was like, okay, I feel I kind of gotta. So as we're kind of like heading towards the elevator, I kind of turned to him and say, so is the possibility of you doing, you know, some more Star Wars still on the table or not? And he says he still talks to the people at Lucasfilm on the regular. He spent the last 6-7 years making Knives Out films, so he's been a little busy. His new film that he's currently writing now is a thriller along the lines of like The Parallax View or The Conversation.
Like a political thriller.
Yeah, those were the two things. Those are the two films he name checked. So nothing's immediate, but
it's still got feelers.
Yeah, it could. He may someday. They may come to an idea and say, "Yeah, let's." And I asked him. I said straight up. I said, "Do you have any idea what era of the Star Wars timeline would you like to play in?" And he said he was pretty much open to anything. So, you know, beyond the sequels, before the prequels, somewhere in between. So
I think he might be a good Knights of the Old Republic guy, but that's just me. Tell me about this picture from New York Comic Con. Who is this guy?
This was my all-time favorite pice of cosplay that I saw. And
I said the kid from The Wizard grown up, and you laughed at me.
I said,
no. Who is it supposed to be?
Remember back when Nintendo was first launching, and they had that very first television commercial?
Yeah.
Who starred in that very first television commercial?
Oh fuck! I don't remember.
A very young, baby-faced Paul Rudd.
So this is Paul Rudd grown up?
This is Paul Rudd from the Nintendo commercial.
Jesus Christ.
I know, isn't that amazing?
Amazing, but it also could have been the guy from the fucking Is It Live or Is It Memorex tape as well.
That's true, but he wasn't carting. He was wearing a Nintendo Power Glove, not carting around a Barca Lounger with him. So that's why he went.
Tell us about this. Tell us about this Captain America shield and why is it important?
This guy. We were standing in line very early for the Marvel TV panel, and he had it's a metal Captain America shield that he's slowly been getting all the heroes actors to sign. Obviously, if you look, you can see that Stan Lee. It's an actual Stan Lee signature right there in the middle of the star, and then all around he has 5 of the 6 original Avengers. The only one he doesn't have is Scarlett Johansson. He's got the aforementioned Paul Rudd. He's got most of some of the newer heroes like Simu Liu, the young actress who plays Kamala Khan, the actress from who plays Paul Rudd's daughter in the Ant-Man films.
Both of them?
Haley Steinfeld. He's got a bunch.
That shield's gonna be worth a lot of money at some point.
Oh yeah, it's a beautiful. It looks beautiful, and it's a beautiful display item. I'm sure in his home. He's taken it back and forth across the country. We talked a little bit about he's like, every time I put it into, I have a special Pelican case that I put it into that's all padded, and it goes underneath the plane, and I hold my breath the entire flight that it doesn't get lost until I get it back in my mitts again. So yeah.
What about this picture here? This looks like a bunch of people having fun with an 80s reboot is what it looks like.
Yes, it is. And this is I think the thing that kind of excited me the most out of the various panels I saw was, for movies, that is. The remake of The Running Man, which honestly, Edgar Wright was like, yeah, okay, I'll go along with whatever Edgar Wright wants to do. And they showed us the new trailer, which dropped a little bit later. They showed us some footage. And looks great. Looks exciting. Fun. I'm excited to see it.
Stephen King's apparently seen it and said it was good. They didn't do the original ending, but that's okay. You know what else they didn't do the original ending to, Rich? This movie right here, Fright Night. Let's get into it.
Yes, please. I've got early morning tomorrow.
Okay, production. Okay, so reading up on Fright Night, it's amazing. So the development of the script starts with working on Cloak and Dagger, a Dabney Coleman, film. Yeah, the kid Henry Thomas.
Henry Thomas.
I was saying Henry Elliott. No. So he came up with this idea sitting there, and basically, he liked the idea, but he didn't really have a hook. And then he comes up with the idea. He talks to the head of the story department at Columbia, John Byers, and John Byers gives him the idea like, hey, he would probably go and meet somebody. He would need to get help. Who's he going to get help for? He's going to go to Vincent Price, as one does. And in that era, many local TV stations, including northeastern Pennsylvania, had Uncle Ted, and other places had various people like Svengoolie. And we had national syndicated, Elvira and Zachary and all these people did horror movies late nights on Friday and Saturdays. And Holland thought it would be a natural fit to find a local host. So he came up with the concept of Peter Vincent. And do you know where Peter Vincent, the name comes from? Do you know this?
I'm going to guess Peter Cushing and Vincent Price.
That's exactly what it is. So he comes up with the Peter Vincent character, and once he has the Peter Vincent character, he bangs out the script, wrote the screenplay himself. He had some bad experiences where basically he had really good screenplays that did very well, including Class of 1984, Psycho 2, and the aforementioned Cloak and Dagger. So he goes to the head of Columbia and says, how about I get a shot? I made all these movies. The scripts have been great. Those are movies that made money, not necessarily the greatest of movies, but they made money. And the head of Columbia says, "Yeah, we'll give you a chance." So they go with the casting, and here's where it gets really fun. He goes to Vincent fucking Price. And at the time, if you remember, Vincent Price had been badly typecast and he was in a lot of bad horror movies. And then he basically said, "I don't do that anymore." But he gets an idea from the head of Columbia Pictures, Guy McElwain, says RoddyMcDowell would be great in this role, right? He had started class in 1984, so he'd already read two of Holland's scripts on spec. And he goes to Roddy McDowell. Roddy McDowell's like, "I get it. I understand the role." And he basically comes, like, Roddy McDowell brings this whole thing to the table where he comes up with the genesis of the character being in all these movies in the 20s and 30s when he's young, and then working all the way up to the 60s where he's a washed-up has-been. He writes a whole backstory and a whole storyline for his character that he brings to the table when they come up. And this is another movie, Rich, where they have 2 months of fucking rehearsals. In fact, they actually staged the movie in parts on Columbia sound stages like it's a play for 2 months. Ridiculous. I think this is like the fourth or fifth 80s movie where we've heard about working together for 2 months on these characters, right? And it really shows. I think it's one of the weirdest things because, movies get made so quickly and then they also don't have any of the rehearsal time that we're talking about, right? It just doesn't happen anymore. So Holland and McDowell end up becoming the best of friends. They basically come up with and McDowell at one point invites him to a dinner party that Holland doesn't know he's going to, but he gets invited to the dinner party, and sitting there is Vincent Price, who had seen the movie and said, "I loved it. Thank you so much. You did such a good job with the horror host and the idea of a guy playing a horror icon." And, that makes Holland crazy. Other casting, Chris Sarandon, he basically said to his agent, "I don't want to do a horror film." They're like, "You should read the script." Everybody's buzzing about the script. The script is amazing. But at that point, Sarandon was building out his character, and he didn't want to get typecast as a villain or anything where his timeline was up, right?
Yeah.
But then he starts talking. He meets Holland during a meeting with Herb Jaffe, and they hit it off immediately. They end up making a bunch of movies together afterwards. So it's like, it becomes the idea that, when he goes into this meeting, Holland has the entire movie penned out. He has the entire thing mapped out. So Sarandon can see everything. And he's like, yes. And it's the same way it gets shot. Ragsdale there's a casting director on the film named Jackie Birch. She had seen William Ragsdale, who plays Charlie, audition for Rocky Dennis and Mask the year before at Universal. And so, he auditioned several times, but he beat out people like Charlie Sheen and other young actors. Stephen Geoffreys, who bombed in an audition for Weird Science, basically was also remembered by Jackie Birch, and he came in and he really wanted to be Charlie Brewster, but they said, "No, we want you for the part of Evil Ed," and his agent accepted, even though Geoffreys wasn't. He was baffled and heartbroken about the state of affairs, right? He didn't understand. And then Amanda Bearse, basically, she was a casting call audition. So of all the actors in the movie, the only one that hadn't been seen prior was Amanda Bearse, and she comes in and she nails it, right? So one of the great auditions where they basically understand. So, they did this whole thing with 2 months of working very close. There were some changes to the final cut of the script because originally the Jerry Dandridge was more villainous, but Sarandon talked Holland into building up the Amy as lost love storyline, which wasn't really part of the movie. And then also Sarandon talked Holland into making him funny. Also, let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen a vampire eat more fruit than this movie, Rich?
No.
Do you know why he eats fruit in the movie?
Because he feels he was like partially descended from a fruit bat, and he uses it to cleanse his palate.
Yes, that is right. That's exactly right. I think it's one of the most fantastic vampire choices of all time.
Oh.
Also, the way he eats the apples are fucking terrifying. The apple has no core, Rich. He's just eating the core. So that happens. Then they build in all kinds of, like, for an 80s movie, it has a lot of homoerotic stuff, right? With Sarandon and Jonathan Stark, who plays Billy Cole, right? That they never really, like, Stark reading the script didn't think anything of it. And Holland, at one point during the shoot, the scene where after Charlie hits him with the pencil, he told Stark to get on your knees when they shot it. And Stark didn't understand, but then when they showed the film at a screening, Stark's like, oh, I get it now. I understand. It's way worse than what I thought it was. And then McDowell, do you know who McDowell used as an inspiration for his character, Peter Vincent? This is amazing. McDowell told Holland in private that his character is based on the Cowardly Lion.
Okay.
But it's more genius than you think, because think about all the things that, the Cowardly Lion is an overactor. He's also incredibly scared most of the time. And so his performance is patterned after the Cowardly Lion, right? Put him up. Fights with one paw tied behind my back. And also one of the things you hear about, like, these people are so close. All you hear about the talk about the set was the intimacy, how close the actors were, how great RoddyMcDowell was as a person, right? He was like, he did home movies. He invited people out for big cast dinners and all these other things. It becomes one of the great, I just watched the John Candy documentary. I Like Me. It's an amazing movie. It's incredible. But the key to, like, the stories when we're talking about our older movies that we love, like Fright Night, is when somebody like RoddyMcDowell comes up and you hear these amazing behind the scenes about how he helped people get over their script problems, help people do this, or was pulling and pushing behind the scenes to make sure everybody was together and in a good group. Those people don't exist a lot, Rich. And when you get stories of them in Hollywood, they become legendary, right? Filming occurs December 3rd, 1984, wraps February 23rd, 1985. So quick shoot. It's the lowest budget at the time. It was the lowest budgeted film in production at Columbia. They're also, this is a funny note, they were at Columbia, they're focusing all their attention on Perfect, so nobody bothered Tom Holland. Everybody was focused on the Jamie Lee Curtis, John Travolta movie. And then they also had an accident on the set where they actually had to work around William Ragsdale breaking his ankle. And it's in the movie. Like, you don't see it anywhere, but they worked around it. They built things. They kind of like somebody getting pregnant on a film set. And it's, it becomes one of the great storylines of the movie is that they've worked around it. They've found ways to shoot scenes so that they didn't have to encourage him to stand on his ankle or be in long periods. Richard Edlund is the head of visual effects on this movie, Rich, as well. He and his team had just finished the effects on Ghostbusters, which I don't know if we've talked about, Rich, was one of the most expensive visual effects movies of its time because of the rush nature of it and everything.
I'm not familiar with the movie, but
but the interesting thing here is when this movie comes into play, basically Holland goes to them and gives them the effects list and the effects shots, and basically they're like, we can do this so much cheaper because of all the money we just wasted on Ghostbusters.
And what we learned from what we did on Ghostbusters.
What we learned way down Ghostbusters.
And like that green flame stuff at the end, I think is just stunning.
And there are some effects parts of this movie that are absolutely mind-blowing. The Billy Cole melting on the stairs is a fantastic practical slash, it's essentially looking at a pile of goo and sand. It's essentially AC Moore.
Yes.
but it looks so great. And then like when the fucking skeleton falls off the stairs and the head, the skull rolls to the thing, bounces off and just clacks once. The effects are incredible. Also, I will say one of the things that comes up in the effects, the worst thing that anybody had to deal with, was the idea of the lenses, the contact lenses that were used by 3 out of the 5 actors in the movie, were all like, this was a time when contact lenses were not, they were hard plastic. So they had to be painted, they had to be sanded down, they dried out their eyes. Amanda Bearse had a very adverse reaction to them. Stephen Geoffreys also had an adverse reaction to the point where both of his corneas were scratched after the filming because they left them in far too long. They were set up to only be left in for 20 minutes at a time. Mm-hmm. He actually had a scene that lasted about an hour, and after that he had a lot of things basically go wrong there. It became one of those things where it's basically, the other funny story on set is there's a really great practical effect with a giant bat that they filmed where the bat was attacking Peter Vincent. The bat, Peter Vincent uses one of Billy Cole's bones to block the bat, and the bat was not well constructed, and RoddyMcDowell broke the head of the bat right the fuck off. Clean off. And they had to rebuild the bat. But overall, like none of the stuff you hear about the production, there's no fights. It's all good stuff. And they believe that one of the props they found for the film, the prop that that Peter Vincent uses, might have been from old Columbia horror films from the 60s and 70s that somebody unearthed out of a Columbia thing and gave to the film, and becomes one of the most like iconic 80s character kits. You know what I mean? Like Peter Vincent, the cloak, the fucking, like the bag.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just a great kit. It's one of those, like I said, production though, Rich, it's very fast. They work at cheap prices. It goes very well. I also want to give a shout out. There are 2 of the greatest horror movie house pictures in this movie. There's one where Charlie is waiting and he looks at the house, and it is the scariest fucking house ever put on film. It's got fog rolling off of it. It's got no lights. It's scary as hell. They recreate it like 3 or 4 minutes later in the movie when Peter Vincent comes back from killing Evil Ed and he goes into the room and the house is there again and he's looking up at the house, and it's the greatest picture of a spooky house from my childhood. Like it's the one I remember the most. You know what I mean? It's almost, and I'm not saying it's as good as The Exorcist, but it's almost as iconic as The Exorcist, where fucking Max von Sydow standing outside and he's looking at the windows.
Yeah.
But the production goes by pretty quick. Box office.
And for all that,
actually, you know what? For all that, it opens it becomes the second highest grossing horror film of 1985. Mm-hmm. It grosses $24 million domestic because it didn't do anything international. Its opening weekend in August of 1985. It grosses $6.1 million, which is about a quarter of its gross. It opens in 1,542 theaters, eventually getting out to 1,545 theaters. It lasts 5 weeks in theaters, which is an eternity for horror films, because most horror films drop 70% in the second weekend. And if you look at the inflation-adjusted domestic box office, it would be $79.4 million, which would put it 3rd or 4th on this year's list for horror films. Mm-hmm. So it's an incredible thing. The movie, do you know the movie it lost out to as the second highest grossing 1985 horror film? Do you know what the first movie is?
No.
Had to look it up. It is Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge.
Oh. Okay.
So that movie grossed $30 million. It's only 6 million more than one of the biggest hits of 1984 and a big hit of 1985. Critical response then and now. This movie was a hit. It was a crowd pleaser in 1985, and now has become one of the greatest cult films of the 80s by a long shot. It's not even close how great it's achieved the status. It does have the single greatest Siskel review, and the single greatest Siskel review is this. First off, at some point, and we'll get to that in a second, but Roger Ebert gave this review. Fright Night is not a distinguished movie, but it has a lot of fun being undistinguished. I think that is pretty much the key to the movie, is that it is a fun, well-intentioned, like, horror film. Like, it's a horror comedy, but there are a lot of horror comedies that are making fun of horror films, right? This one loves horror films. Like, it's like Scream. Scream has a lot of funny moments, but it's still a baseline slasher movie that's well done, right? This is in the same boat as Scream. This is in the same realm of possibilities. It is a vampire movie that has laughs. It is a vampire movie that has psychosis and pathos. You know, Sarandon gets mentioned in a lot of the reviews, Rich, where you look up and the reviews are like, Variety at one point said Sarandon's performance, he's terrific as the vampire, quite affable and debonair until his fingernails start to grow and his eyes get that glow. And it's one of those movies where, you know, it's at 83% on Rotten Tomatoes. The popcorn meter is 77%, which is 83 for a horror film in the 80s is remarkably high. Very hard. We're not talking about, Heredity and Sinners and Weapons. 80s horror films were considered schlock most of the time, or garbage, or teen garbage. It's at 77 popcorn meter for 50,000 rating, 50,000 reviews. And I just think, as the rewatch today, Sarandon's great. RoddyMcDowell's great. Ragsdale is great. Amanda Bearse is great. Like, I think the key to the movie is the cast. The cast.
Yeah. They bring their A game.
They're all good. They're all above average to good, right? With regards to casting in an 80s horror film. And then you add Sarandon. Sarandon is, I was thinking about this today, and I think I'm going to bring it up tomorrow on Loud and Nerdy. This might be one of my favorite vampire performances. It keeps the sexual nature of the vampire. He's dangerous. He's alluring. He's all the things that you would need. Like, if Chris Sarandon tomorrow was, like, they decided he was going to play Dracula, it wouldn't be like 80s Chris Sarandon could have played Dracula in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
It would have been a fantastic movie. But this particular vampire, like, he's so suave. He's so debonair. He's so 80s cool. The fucking scarf and leather jacket is like, the costume design is great. The line deliveries are great. Sarandon, I think, makes the movie for me. Although McDowell's the heart and guts of the movie, man. Because he's the one that has to get over his fear. Charlie's never afraid. Charlie's always like, I want to go and stake the vampire. But RoddyMcDowell is terrified. And once he gets to the point where he isn't terrified, it's like this character arc that you don't expect in 80s horror films. And I found it's really enjoyable. It's a well done, like, it's a remix of all the good things that you see in horror in vampire movies, but it's also irreverent and funny about the horror host that kind of has fallen on hard times. And then, you get the quirk of the Stephen Geoffreys performance as Evil Ed. You know what I mean? Like, it's got a lot going for it, where it just, all the chemistry play. It's an hour and 46 minutes, which is long for a horror film, but you realize that they've set it up properly. Like, it's not wham bam.
It's got a lot of elements that you just can't jettison one to make it shorter. it's the story's a little bit maybe more complex, a little bit different than your standard, vampire film or standard, horror movie of the decade. And I think that's perfectly fine to let it run for, $1.46. We're all the better for it. The story needs to be exactly as long as it needs to be, and that's exactly as long as it needed to be.
Well, and I think, I was thinking about this also, and I know you don't think about this because you're not as obsessed with horror films as I am, but I was thinking about it today. It is one of the great vampire deaths. He gets a fantastic scene-stealing death as a vampire. Like, sometimes vampires get staked, sometimes vampires get the sun, but the idea that they have the set piece at the end of the movie where Charlie's dealing with Amy, who's turned, and Peter Vincent's trying to break into the coffin, and everything's blacked out, and then they realize that they have to start hitting the windows and just throwing things across this. Like, it is a fantastically well set up vampire death. And at one point, Jerry Dandridge, the vampire, he's moving, and he chases Peter Vincent, and Charlie runs up and just kind of pulls the curtain, and the fucking flames shoot across. And it is a grand Guggenol vampire death. It's fantastic. And not every vampire movie ends this well. You know what I mean? And then, of course, it also ends with a teaser for a sequel that we will get later that isn't great. And we can jump right into legacy and franchise viability. Let's go. So there's a sequel. It is not good. It is borderline awful. But they tried. And then there are so many weird little stories about trying to go back to this. Now they do the reboot in 2011. They call it Fright Night. It's written by Marty Noxon, who did Buffy the Vampire Slayer, who's also returning for the Buffy the Vampire Slayer reboot. It's got Charlie, it's got his mom, it's got an Evil Ed character, it's got Amy, who's not really Amy, it's got Peter Vincent as David Tennant as a horror magician, and it's got Billy Cole, and it has Jerry Dandridge, and he's no longer a lovelorn vampire. He is a full-on predator vampire that's working in Las Vegas, and it's not great. The reboot, it's basically Fright Night in name only. We're talking about this.
Yeah. On an episode 2 years ago, almost to the day, come to think of it, of the Big Picture podcast, which is one of the other podcasts I do with my wonderful best friend Natasha Bogutsky. We sat down and we watched both the original and the remake of Fright Night, and we kind of compared and contrasted and talked about that. So if you dig back into the archives at bigpicturepod.com, you can find that episode. I gave that a listen to this afternoon, actually. Yeah. And I was kind of impressed with what we were able to dig out between the two, and contrasting and saying where something didn't work as well and why and stuff. So
Tom Holland said, and I think it's the best part of the whole thing, kudos to them on every level for their professionalism, but they forgot the humor and the heart. They should have called it something other than Fright Night because it had no more than a passing resemblance to the original. What they did to Jerry Dandridge and Peter Vincent was criminal. Outside of that was wonderful. And that's the truth. There is no bad feelings between the two casts, but there's really a lot of good feelings between the cast. Colin Farrell, when he got the role, met Chris Sarandon, and the story goes that he gave him a bottle of wine and a DVD set of the Carl Dreyer Vampire, which I just did in my 31 for 31, and was just super excited about meeting him. Also, we need to get this story on the pod because it's amazing. At some point, RoddyMcDowell enjoyed playing Peter Vincent so much that he wanted to bring Holland back to the franchise. They worked on part 2, Ragsdale and him. They're the only two that worked on part 2, which is a bit of a train wreck of a movie. And they wanted to bring Holland back and bring the whole family back. And they went to Carolco Pictures. Do you know who Carolco Pictures was run by at that time, Rich?
At that point, I can't remember along their timeline.
Oh, it's going to jog your memory in a second. The chairman of the board of Carolco Pictures, who was interested in a true Fright Night Part 3 with everybody back, was Jose Menendez. So they were in discussions with Jose Menendez, but as many people might know, before that meeting could be, before they could have a second meeting on it, Menendez and his wife were murdered by their sons Lyle and Eric. And there went the idea of a true sequel with everybody coming on board. And then Fright Night Part 2 got pushed direct to video. And after that, it was up. But there are a lot of things in the works. Like there is a Fright Night Novel 3 that's Fright Night Part 3 novel. So Holland has still gone back to this, but they're all
excuse me.
They're all kind of things where, you know, comic books, novelizations. There's a Fright Night video game. There was a Fright Night stage adaptation, and there's even a foreign version of the movie that was done as a Bollywood musical. So it has got legs. It is got, the Fright Night franchise has never died down. And as we've progressed through the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and the aughts, and the 2010s, we've seen that this movie has stood the test of time. 40 years for this movie. And Fright Night is one of the best examples of an 80s horror film that you could actually come up with. And I enjoyed it so much that I was watching it today, Rich. It's such a good movie. It's so well done. Amanda and Stephen Geoffreys worked together prior, yes. And she didn't come back for Part 2 because she was working on Married with Children. Oh, you're so cool, Brewster. Yes. The whole movie, though, it has a quality to it that is not like other 80s horror films. And that's the only way to describe it. It's a movie that you can watch almost any time. It's really easy to digest. And it's just a cool concept. It ends up being one of the cooler vampire concepts. What if you looked out your window and you were a big horror fan and somebody was moving a coffin into the basement across the street? It's one of the greatest concepts ever. Okay. We've gone long, not too long, but we've gone long. Where can people find your stuff, Rich Drees?
All of my writing can be found at filmbuffonline.com. I do 2 other podcasts, the aforementioned Big Picture podcast, which we haven't done an episode of in a little while due to various things. I'm hoping within the next couple of weeks, Natasha and I are going to fix that. The other podcast I do is the Film Scribes, which is the official podcast of the Philadelphia Film Critics Circle, which I am a proud member of. And we just dropped an episode on Tuesday or Wednesday, I can't remember, and I produced the thing and I can't remember. And that one, we talked about one battle after another. Some of our members talked about some of the things they saw at Fantastic Fest and New York Film Festival. And we also kind of previewed some of the films we were looking forward to during the currently ongoing Philadelphia Film Critics Circle, Philadelphia Film Festival, excuse me. And I can be found on the socials on Blue Sky, Twitter, and Threads at FilmbuffRich. And right now, though, only on Blue Sky. I have been doing a long thread of my quick little 1-sentence reviews of all the movies that I've seen so far during the festival. So, find me, check it out.
JW Movie Guy on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, all those places. I'm also in the middle of 31 for 31 new to me horror films that I've never seen. I've hit silent films. I've hit films from the 30s. I found this group of filmmakers, Rich. You're going to have to look into them because they're really close to you in your neck of the woods. Have you ever heard of the Addams Family?
Vaguely, but I'm not familiar with any of their work, really.
They have 3 movies that are playing on Tubi and Shudder, and they are phenomenal. They are really good. There's the Deeper You Dig. There is a movie called Hellbender, and then there's a movie called Where the Devil Roams. And they're 3 people a mother, a daughter, and a mother, a daughter, and a father. They make movies together in New York, right across the Roscoe Bridge, right up in Honesdale, right there. And they're part of the 31 for 31. I've seen all three of their movies in the last 48 hours. I am fucking hooked. They are awesome.
Okay.
But that's the kind of thing I've been saying. I also watched The Cabin of Dr. Caligari for the first time in my life.
Wonderful, isn't it?
Oh my God, it was great. It's Dr. Seuss sets with fucking creepy shit, and it's silent and it's in German.
And now you understand Tim Burton on a whole new level.
I understand Tim Burton on a whole new level. I also understand the concept. Like, you can watch that movie, and as a horror film fan, you can get 5, 6, 7, 8 tropes just out of that movie that are copied. The movie came out in 1920, right? You can get 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 tropes out of that movie that are still being done in 2025, 104 years later, 105 years later. Yeah. So it's an incredible thing. And the one easy one is the idea that the person telling the story is a bad narrator and that they've envisioned this entire thing themselves, which, you know, if you've seen Shutter Island or you see, like, it's one of those things that it'll just blow your mind that it's the same, that we've essentially got 5 or 6 tropes out of that movie that are just incredible. But I'm doing that. We also have a big show coming up on this network the night before Thanksgiving. New host, new night, new time, Indie Brigade with Thomas J. Churchill, filmmaker. And then I also do this big show on Tuesday nights called Loud and Nerdy with my good friend Jerry Kimura and sometimes Joe Ridgely. And we look forward to seeing that. I look forward to seeing them again this week. And then we will be back next Monday night.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. We do this little movie called Silver Bullet, which has one of the great uncle performances of all time. It's also got a great. It's from a Stephen King novel called The Cycle of the Werewolf, a novella, and it's just a really fun 80s werewolf flick. And then 2 weeks from tonight, Return of the Living Dead, one of the greatest non-Romero zombie films ever made. Thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate everybody joining us. Thank you for having me back. Met Amanda Bearse a few years ago. She was nice. And then Joe says, great show, guys. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you so much. We appreciate everybody. Go see some movies. Things are opening. We're getting ready to get to November. November and December are the 2 big months for both Oscar movies and for big money movies. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Next week, I'll have a rundown of like the number of movies I've seen, like all through the Philly film.
Yeah, you're on fire. I'm very jealous. The one I'm more jealous. I'm super jealous about you seeing Wake Up Dead Man, but I'm more jealous. I think I might be more jealous about Begonia.
Begonia is butt nuts.
I'm an Emma Stone guy. Always have been. Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see everybody next week. Keep the faith. Go see movies. Find some art and love it, and just get us through.
Watch movies together. Oh shit! This camera reverses me. It mirrors.
No,
me.
That's fine. You got it in. You did fine. Okay. There you go. Watch movies together. Perfect.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us. Everybody have a great week. Bye.